So what's up? My name is Jonathan Iredell. I'm going to be leading this workshop. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully you guys can hear me. And I'm just going to go ahead and start talking. You're more than welcome to chime in if you have any questions, or maybe I'll ask some questions. So first, a little bit about myself. My name is Jonathan Iredell. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia. I'm a poet and an artist and a videographer. I do a lot of media and music and do a lot of writing. I've been doing spoken word poetry is one of my first, creative outlets. So I got really into spoken word poetry back in 2014 when I started performing around DC at Busboys and Poets. And I actually worked there for a while as a server as well. I got more into poetry, started writing short stories and novels and stuff. And I also work as a teacher. So I'm a math teacher. I teach physics and calculus and a lot of after school programs like AP test prep programs. But, ever since then, I got really into the music and the side of poetry. And I've been doing some hip hop events and other art events and graffiti artwork. And I do some videography about that. So that's a little uh, background about me. Once again, my name is Jonathan Iredell, and my stage artist name is Jon Eye, Jon space EYE. And so today, this workshop's just going to be about creative writing, getting your creative outlets out there. Just revealing, your ideas, because a lot of times there's this blockade between your ideas and, your expression and just sharing your work, sharing your ideas. Once you can get that flowing, and kind of take an idea and learn a way to expand it to become even more and to just expand it into a way that people are going to relate to, is in itself kind of a skill. And so I have taught a couple creative writing classes. So I'm actually going to share my screen really quick because I have a syllabus from a creative writing class that I taught a little while back. So you should be able to see this as a creative writing syllabus. So hopefully this is in fact sharing. I think it is. So this was a syllabus for creative writing. It's an 8-week class, but I'm just going to kind of crunch through it really quick so you can have some ideas of things that you can keep in mind when you're creative writing. So the goal of this workshop or class is to enhance your writing skills and can create this continuing inspiration, motivation that allows you to tap into your creativity and find confidence in your writing and sharing your writing and find new reasons to write and emphasize on lyrics. So there's a bunch of different topics that, you want to keep in mind when you're writing, because, if you understand how these work and how they affect the reader, then it can you can enhance your writing and make it more powerful. Think about like why you're writing and what ideas you want to express while you're writing and the structure of the writing, because these can have a strong impact on the reader or on the listener if it's a live performance or if it's just something you wrote. Um, and so, it helps to guide, the reader so that they understand, what the purpose is and how everything comes together. That's why we often have like key sentences that kind of instruct the reader what to think. And so, for example, like when you're reaching like a conflict, you know what I mean? You have to emphasize that this is, in fact, going to be a problem. And these are the reasons why it's going to be a problem. A lot of times we feel like it's implied, and you can imply that indirectly. So, you could say that, for example, if the character has an issue that their house is burned down or fell apart, you know what I mean? It's kind of obvious that is going to be some problems for that character, but you kind of want to emphasize why this is such a problem, right? They have now no place to stay, right? They lost their valuable items that were special to them. You know what I mean? Even though, you can probably infer that happened, you want to kind of make it more something that they can relate with. That way the reader it's like, wow, okay, I could imagine myself losing my valuable items and other things that could be implied, but you want to really also, you don't have to say it as directly like they lost their valuable items. You could refer to specific items like, and they lost their their grandmother's necklace, and anything that kind of rings extra relatability with the reader. And so if you know how to kind of present your conflict and present the themes and the struggle, or maybe like if it's just them trying to achieve goals, I mean, your character is just trying to overcome something, or maybe become the best at a certain task. You know what I mean? You want to explain why, like, why do they want to be the best soccer player, right? And why is it important? So that way there brings importance to the writing, importance to the journey that this character is going on, which also creates importance in the reader, and it'll be important to them as well that your character succeeds. And then when you reach like a climax, also emphasize the importance of that. You know what I mean? If so, for example, if he wants to be the best soccer player, you could say, and then he scored 10 goals that day, and it was the best feeling that he's ever had, right? And so rather than just saying he scored 10 goals, the end, you want to make sure you emphasize like this was great. However, you choose that will make the most sense in that situation. But if you say that, this is the best feeling that they ever had, they've always wanted to achieve this goal, right? This is how I feel. This character feels amazing. This character has never done so greatly, right? Something that adds additional emphasis to let people know that this is the climax. This is the best part of the story. You know what I mean? So that the character once again relates, and they're brought with you on this journey. And so as long as you can create that importance to the story, then your reader will also feel that it's an important story to them as well. And so there's plenty of other things to make it more interesting, like in the vocabulary list, using metaphors and irony, imagery, and figurative language, which is when you express something in a way that it isn't literally, like, just for example, the metaphor. And personification is when you make an object or an animal seem more human. An analogy. So you can look these up. I can share the link, um, put it in the chat if anyone wants to look at this. So anyone with the link can view. So maybe I have to stop sharing to do that. So if anyone chooses to go to this link, which is the syllabus, they can do so in the chat. So I'll go back to it here so we can keep scrolling through it. So in this class, I created some activities that we could work through. The idea is to keep, provoking creativity. So one piece of advice that I always give to writers is to always have something to write with. And so, these days you can just have a phone, right, and your notepad. I use Google Docs a lot, so I suggest everyone kind of get familiar with Google Docs or another similar writing service such as Evernote, which is another document writing cloud. And so when you use Google Docs, for example, you can access it from your phone or from your computer. Same thing with Evernote. And which is why I like it better than just the notepad on your phone, because if you lose your phone, then you lose all those notepads and you can't type it and edit it from your computer. So it depends on how important it is, and if it's important, you want it to be stored somewhere. And just getting in the habit of having that app open on your phone, or if you have a notepad that you want, like an actual with a pen and pencil you want to write on, just having it accessible like is a huge thing. So a lot of times when people have great ideas and they're like, oh, that's such a great idea, and if they don't have that habit of like, I need to write this down, right, it won't be written down. even if they feel like it was important, like, oh, I'll write it down later, and then they never do. And but if you start writing down things just for no reason and just get in the habit of like, oh, I'm gonna write that down, I'm gonna write that down, even if it wasn't that great of an idea, or if eventually you'll have a great idea and it'll be instinct to just be like, this is getting written down for sure. And so that's why the first so this I was saying, we're start with some exercises, and it could be you could write something that's healing or personal, or just opening your thoughts to ourselves, because a lot of times we have thoughts that we don't even really express, and sometimes when we write it down, it kind of opens this portal, like, what else do I have to say to myself? What other thoughts do I have in my head that need to be expressed? And so sometimes it's purposeful to in creating messages and powerful, even and comical statements, and discover the purpose and tone while you're writing. So sometimes you'll start writing and then you don't even realize what you're writing or why you're writing it. And then partway through, you realize the importance, like, wow, this actually has to do with some deeper ideas. Or maybe this is actually really funny. I didn't think, now that I've started writing it, I realized the humor in this story. So first, I would suggest everyone just start writing journal entries, right? Just like, if what do you feel right now, right? Or just what's new, like keep up and date. Today I did this, today I did that. Maybe like a log for work. I know a lot of people have work and school. And so just having like kind of like a log, like today we did this, today we did this, like with dates of what you did, would actually be really helpful, because then you can refer back, like, what did we do last week in class or at work? Like, did I even send that email? Right. And you have this log of just everything you did. And I know it seems like just in writing, like, of course, you're going to write the email and then you're going to write also that you wrote the email. And it seems like it's just extra time. So, I mean, you don't have to write down everything you did, you know what I mean? But I think that the more you write down, the more capable of remembering, of course, what you did, but also you'll just get in that habit of writing things down, and you'll start, just having that notepad open anyway. And then you'll write down goals like, oh, I wrote that email, but I think I should also email this person next time. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So having a notepad going and just writing down your thoughts and ideas is very important. And then we can jump to more writing activities, such as making a list is another writing activity that I would suggest. And once again, we have all kinds of prompts here that we probably won't get to, but I think that I encourage anyone to look at this document afterwards. Lists of things. So I know a lot of my writing, my poems and songs were originally inspired by a list. Just made a list of different things that you wanted to touch on. And one poem that I think I might share with you guys is about memories. And so I just was really interested in the psychology of how memories work, how we obtain memories, and how we store memories, how we share memories, and how memories can impact the future. And I made a list of just things having to do with memories, like whether it's just an idea like, oh, I remember that, or like talking about how some things are remembered for hundreds of years through stories, and some things are kind of like permanently remembered in our head and we can't really forget, whereas other things slip out of our minds and we forget them. And some memories make us happy, some memories make us sad, right? So just different topics having to do with memories. And then if I were to write a story about memories, maybe it'll be not directly about memories, but I want to include all these kind of theme of memories in my story. Or maybe it'll be about someone who, has no memories, and so then these are things that they want. Or, for example, I wrote a poem, which was a song about memories, and I had already had this list of interesting topics about memories and interesting ideas about it. So then there's some other assignments, like write an allegory, like Aesop's fables, like this tortoise and the hare, this is why you should be slow and steady. And satire, right? You can write a fake news story like The Onion. and different things to just get the blood pumping. Short story and write a poem in meter was another activity. And then the final activity for this class that I taught was to write a song. And so then you have an emphasis on the hook or chorus, which is one part that is more repetitive, designed to hook people in. And then the other part, which of course is the verses, which kind of goes deeper into the concept. And so, okay, then the last one is to write a rap, right? So it had more to do with alliterations and rhyme schemes, like internal rhyme schemes, assonances, which is when you use the same vowel consonant over and over again, um, and a stricter meter, so it keeps it within the same number of syllables. So those were the assignments I gave, and I encourage everyone to look through this document, you know, if they're looking for ideas to write about, things to talk about. So there's one other piece of advice that just kind of similar like to the list idea when I was talking about memories, and I made a list of ideas having to do with memories that I wanted to talk about in my poem. There's another piece of advice that I think always makes your writing more interesting, and you could apply all of these topics, whether it's poem or a song, or if it's literally an email for work, you know what I mean? Like if you're keeping it on point and you're also engaging and emphasizing the importance of what you're saying, even if it's a very serious business email, you know, if you know how to write, you know how to emphasize the importance accurately and to like tie the two ideas together, then it's going to make your writing more powerful no matter what the context is that you're writing for. And one other piece of advice that I think it could enhance your writing is kind of like a personal trick that I use often that I'm gonna make this the focus of today's workshop. So this is what I call a telescopic writing or a telescopic poem, right? And which is where, if you ever have seen those videos where it zooms all the way in to like an atom and then it zooms all the way out to like the cosmos. So I'm thinking maybe I could find that video. So here it is. So this is kind of my idea of the telescopic poem, right? So hopefully you guys can still see this. Let me make sure that, yeah, okay. So this is kind of my idea, and maybe I'll watch it in playback speed 1.5 just so that we're not gonna sit all. So it's got Luis here, and then person, tables. So it zooms all the way out, and it's the whole society, the whole area, right? The entire coast, and then of California, the continent, and then the planet, and then the moon, right? And then now we have the whole solar system. And then the nearby star cluster. That was the Oort cloud, which was the asteroids outside of the planets. And here's the galactic neighborhood. And there's the whole Milky Way. And then other galaxies. Of course, it's got the scale down at the bottom, which is the coolest part. Oops. So now it starts to zoom back in, right? And goes all the way to Earth, or to the solar system, and then to Earth. And back to Luis laying in the grass, who is imagining all of this. Then there's the eye, the blood cells, the chromosomes, the DNA, the polymers, which are proteins. Those are the atoms and the orbitals. the electron orbitals, and now here's the nucleus with the proton and neutrons, and the quarks, which make up the hadrons, which are the particles inside the nucleus of an atom, right? So this is kind of like a telescopic view of our world, right? So that's pretty cool. I feel like a lot of people saw that before, but if you haven't, you're welcome for blowing your mind. Oops, hold on. It's coming again. Okay. So that was kind of like the idea of a telescopic view, right? You can see something and then you can zoom in or zoom out to see, the bigger picture or the smaller picture, so to speak, right? And so my idea is that you can apply that to your writing. And so you can take a concept, and my concept was memories, right? And you can see how that applies on a micro scale, which would be just to an individual person or just to an individual experience or situation, right? And you can think of probably a million different ways that memories, and my other topic was dreams, so you can think of all the different ways that memories or dreams, or for example, just courage, right? And how courage has affected you as a person, your memories, dreams, or courage, whatever the topic is, has affected you as a person, or just how specific situations where it affected the situation, where you're being more courageous, or just like a specific situation that you remember really well, or that where your memories have helped you, or a specific dream, right? So it's goes from the ultra specific, and then you can zoom out, right, conceptually, to when you're talking about just generally speaking the memories of your life or the dreams that you have for yourself. And this could be literally dreams that you have when you're sleeping, or just generally like I dream of becoming the best soccer player, or just the courage that you have to do things, if you courageously want to take risks and move to a new city, for example, like bigger courage, acts, larger acts of courage, right? Or how it can and then you can zoom out even further and think about how, like, memories have brought your family together, or how the dream, like a single person's dream, has led to so much bigger and more people being involved. Like, for example, Steve Jobs had the dream of creating these devices and these computers, right? And now that dream is coming into fruition, and now there's like billions of people involved in the company, millions, and also billions of people using his products, right? So that dream has kind of expanded, and now it impacts the world, and his courage to do so, right, to take those risks, to make those products, or like the courage that that maybe um, Abraham Lincoln had to, move forward in ending, slavery and leading the Civil War. Certain acts of courage that have affected people in the future, or has affected people around you. If you know someone who acted courageous and saved everyone from impeding disaster, right? So then how it's not just a specific thing that affects one person, but now it's something that can affect the community. And then finally you can zoom all the way out to like a final third perspective, to see how like courage or dreams or memories or whatever the topic is, and how that could affect the entire planet, the entire species of the human race or society. So you can see, if you zoom out all the way, you know, and you can see how just generally like our collective memories as humans, in the way that we perceive the world, works, and how those can like how we write things down. For example, so many people have written things down to be remembered by other people in the future, and how that's affected us. That's really allowed us to obviously differentiate ourselves from the other species on Earth, because we can pass on lessons and memories to our children through language. And so it's all really interconnected. Language could be another topic, right? How language has affected you, how language has affected the community or a group, and how language as a whole is important in the first place, right? Amongst the idea of language at the most telescopic, zoomed out view, and how that's affected humans altogether, right? And so then you can also see how, dreams have affected humans altogether. Like, what if humans didn't dream? Would we live differently? Right? Would we be a much more boring society if no one had any actual dreams when they slept, or if they just didn't have any outrageous goals like beyond today, future dreams of the future? And how does that affect everyone as a whole, right? So the telescopic idea, and I usually do it in 3 stages. I'm sure you could probably think of more maybe, but the first stage is just how it affects the individual, and then how it affects their community, right, around them, and how it's interpersonal, like maybe even if it's just between you and one other person, right? How does language affect your communication with other people? How does courage affect your relationships with other people, right? And then the third telescopic, zoomed out, most telescopic view has to do with seeing society as a whole, right? So how does this affect all humans, right? How does this affect every person? And so that telescopic concept, kind of, I used it a lot in my poems. So it's kind of like one of my secrets, that I used it in a poem about memories, dreams, and language. So if I can give you an example here. So I'm going to open this. Okay, I need to reshare it. Oop. Okay, so I believe I'm sharing this poem now. So this poem, like I said, it was about memories, right? And so you'll notice that I used a telescopic format for this poem when I wrote it. And so it zooms kind of to the bigger picture to see like how it affects me is the first verse, and then how it affects, my communication and my community, right? And kind of like my life physically, how I interact with people, and how it has affected my surroundings and my relationships with my community, or just, and then the third final verse is how it affects society, right? How we treat memories that are passed down for generations, kind of at the most telescopic view. And it doesn't necessarily have to zoom out, right? You could also zoom in and start at a most zoomed out version and then zoom in, right? Or maybe you can zoom in and out however you want, right? But this is how I start kind of individual to kind of relate with the viewer or the listener or the reader the most. Like this is how we experience memories, and then how it impacts, your life and your community, and then how generally memories have affected the human race. So I'm going to go ahead and say this, read this. You can read along. So the first verse, like I said, it's not only is it individual, but I actually kind of address how memories even work, right? Psychologically and with our minds, right? So I'm going to drink some water really quick. All right. I'm remembering memories. It's a never-ending remembering of memories. I'm remembering these memories. As time passes, each moment I grasp it, to take it home in a basket, to make it everlasting, to keep into the casket. I'm fascinated, sometimes aggravated and activated by that which made it into my fabricated ascertainment of mental replaying entertainments. My brain is convoluted with corridors. More come forth. How do you order yours? Mine are behind locked doors, or scattered on the floor, or under cushions on the couch, for years later to be refound. Some memories burn, some are profound, some idle in turn, some are too loud, and I cannot turn them down. They never seem to be exactly how they were before the shroud of my fundamental mental cloud. This one memory refreshes much more. It's my screensaver for all of my data stored, a billion neural pathways and shortcuts for recreation. Have you created your memories? I'm remembering memories. It's a never ending remembering of memories. I'm remembering these memories. So once again, that was the personal experience with memories, like how I obtain memories and how I perceive the world through memories. I use a lot of metaphors, like one that always gets people's the cushions on the couch, right? So I feel like memories are often like that old credit card, you lose in the couch, right? And all of a sudden you find it years later. It's like, wow, I forgot, right? And now I remember. And also it's just kind of like you obtain them, right, and you store them, and it's always kind of running like an entertainment playing in your head, right? And it's like you're refabricating these ideas and experiences, and sometimes it just seems confusing and you can't remember things, and sometimes they jump out at you, and sometimes you just can't turn them off. And so it's much like, a database, right? Your hard drive, right? You're trying to refresh, and it's got your data stored in neural pathways and shortcuts. Just because what I find it interesting that, a lot of times you can't remember something, but then once you remember one thing, it leads to another thing and another thing. It's almost like they're all linked together, which is actually very similar to how the brain works. The neurons are connected with each other, and the signals is sent across the synapses, which is the space between the tendrils of the neurons. So the neurons are a cell in the brain with tendrils reaching out, which get close to the tendrils of other neurons. And then so electrical signals are sent, and the synapses, which is the space in between the neurons, as those get closer, right, then that means that as the electrical signals jump more often, they get connected closer. So that's why when you do something often, you get faster and faster and better at it, because those neurons involving that skill get much more connected. And so that's why you can memorize a whole poem, by practicing. So the next verse has to do with how memories have affected, more interpersonal, like my life, much more directly, right? Rather than just the most telescopic view, microscopic view was inside of my brain. And so that was the first verse. This next verse could, just as long as it's a little zoomed out. So now I'm thinking that there could be 4 stages, right? The first one could be internal. The next one could be how it affects me external. And then it could be community. And then it could be society. And that community could be as small as a family or as big as a city, So really there could even be stages within the community telescopic portion. So here's verse 2. I swear I can have any moment for life. Even if it was wrong, I put in a jar and keep it right in my mind and keep the lid tight. Look past snafus and poor sights, memorized it so I might reopen it at night. As I watch it cross from subconscious to consciousness, mental imagery spread with or without consent. Every moment we live is a moment we spent. Unless the moment is for life, then I'll never forget. When I have a special moment, I take my time and own it. I feel it and hold it. I mark it and zone it. I chart it and tone it like I'm part of the moment. And so I'm proud to show it. I'll tell the tales for years, even when it doesn't come as clear. I can still make it reappear because I'm so proud of my moments. I'm so proud of my moments. I am found in my moments. The past, it knows us. The seeds we've grown it. It seems we've sown it. In my mind, I rewrote it. In my dreams, I atone it for no one, but leave this book open as a memory. I'm remembering memories. It's a never ending remembering of memories. I'm remembering these memories. And so that one was more about how the memories have affected my life, right? How I more of a real relationship with memories rather than a technical relationship with memories, right? So it's more of a personal relationship where I remember things and things can be special. And, I kind of have a more of an emotional attachment to my memories rather than a technical, um, almost scientific attachment, right? And so that was kind of a little bit more zoomed out because rather than zooming in with how the memories are stored in the neurons, it's more zoomed out about how it makes me feel and um, how I seek to remember things and how I enjoy my memories or how sometimes it's twisted, right? So um, I look past, see, I forget the flukes and the fights, and I look past snafus and poor sights. And so I kind of remember, pick and choose what I want to remember. And so here's the third verse. In my thoughts, I revisit these scenes that were given only once in a lifetime. But if I take the time to write the lines, I can reignite mine. I can relive these nice times. The first time is a memory, the second epiphany, the third is in history, but the fourth isn't written. See, every moment I see a blessing. Every second I see the next thing. Every minute I see it can be written. Every hour I believe it is ours, although time devours. In our minds we climb towers and unleash our true powers. In our minds we encounter the forbidden flowers, the spit out sours. I ride out roots when before I cowered. In a memory, it's now or never. I can put it all together. I can have what I never imagined to have ever. Becoming a storyteller, an experienced seller. My words are light as feathers and burn like embers and will forever be remembered as a memory. I'm remembering memories. It's a never ending remembering of memories. I'm remembering these memories, memories, memories. So, and you can see I also have some notes of things that probably didn't use. And so when I was writing this, I kind of revisited it many times. I actually wrote each verse about 6 months after the previous. So it's almost like three different mindsets that I was in. I don't always write like that. I often write the whole thing in one sitting. But I find that sometimes when you revisit a poem later, you see it from a different perspective. And so, although when you're in one mindset and you're writing, you can really dive into how you feel right now. And when you come back to it, you might not feel that same way. And so, it might sometimes you kind of have to write it all in one sitting because you're trying to express a very specific feeling that you have at that time. But other poems, I think that when you revisit it many times, you kind of visit it with many different mindsets. You might be kind of frustrated or something that inspired you to start writing that day, but you might come back when you're more calm and kind of adjust it so that it appeals to you in that mindset. And then you can come back at another time when you're happy or another time when you're sad, or maybe these are exaggerated, um you know like you don't maybe you just are just visiting it many times, and so your mindset is just always different, right? So it's never exactly the same, even if it's similar. You kind of have different preferences. You might have different things that appeal to you or different interests. Sometimes I feel like watching an action movie, sometimes I feel like watching a comedy. It just depends on my mood. And so that's kind of like writing, with your different mood, even if it's just a micro change of mood from Tuesday to Wednesday. You might write different words, or you might want to write about different things. And so that's why some poems I feel like are best when you visit them many times on many different days. And because you can kind of you edit it from many different mindsets. So eventually it should, in theory, appeal to more broad sense, because you might revisit it and be like, this doesn't really appeal to me anymore. I'm sure it appealed to me when I wrote it, but now later I'm in a mindset where it doesn't appeal. And that might not be the whole poem. It might just be a line. It might be like, I think this line would be better if I changed it, because it seemed to only kind of represent how I felt that day. But I want to say something that affects that I could relate to every day. And so that's when you edit something a lot, it makes it more universally appealing to more people. But of course, if you want to really relate with a specific group of people intensely, then you may choose to just write it all in one day, because you don't want to lose that feeling. You know what I mean? Because if you don't feel that same way, you might not know how to finish it. So those are just some examples of if you want to write the whole thing at once, or if you want to write it in multiple sittings, which both have their advantages. And so I hope that this telescopic idea is encouraging. So I wanted that to be the focus of today's workshop. So if you can think of any ideas where you could write a telescopic poem, then, or that I think could be a good example of something you could do right now. And if you want to share any of those ideas, feel free to jump in at any time. And so now, again, this could be applied to anything, right? So I want to take these ideas, like just how at first of beginning of the class, I was talking about how you want to emphasize the importance, right? So if you have a story of someone who wanted to be the best soccer player ever, right? You want to emphasize why. Why do they want to do that, right? They were inspired by watching Pele play as a child, or, Ronaldinho and other great players, and they wanted to play like them, right? So there's this and there's this dream that they could be that, right? They could be the greatest soccer player ever, and it was so motivating that they wanted to practice. And so then when you enhance the importance, right, you don't want to say, hey, this is Fred, he wants to be the greatest soccer player. It's like, okay, but it sounds like I don't care, right? But when you talk about their reasoning why, all of a sudden the reader or the viewer or the listener understands why, and they might care. They might be encouraged. They might be cheering him on. And you can apply this to even like work when you're writing, right? If you're trying to emphasize, you have to emphasize the importance of the things that are important. If you say like, hey, by the way, don't forget to be on time tomorrow, and also bring that TPS report, right, from Office Space. And so you want to emphasize which one of those things are more important. So maybe you could say like, don't forget to be on time tomorrow, and definitely make sure that you have the TPS report, right? Just adding different words that emphasize the more important parts, right? But then, you don't want to overdo it. And so just practicing with leveling your importance levels. From a musical standpoint, I know when I'm editing music, you can make individual words slightly louder, like literally more loud than other words, right? So that makes them more impactful to the listener. And you'll notice that if you're hearing music that other people made, or if you make music, they call it mixing, because you mix it in the volume levels of each sound. And so also with a telescopic technique, you could use that in work or in school as well. You know what I mean? Where you start with one concept and zoom out, or you start with a grander concept and zoom in. So that's why the telescopic technique of writing poems is when you can zoom in and out to different concepts, and you start with a more specific topic, and then you can zoom out and kind of expand into more broad topics. And so that's why we're talking about the telescopic poetry writing technique. What's up, Chris? By the way, I see you coming in. So so we just went through that poem, and I talked about how you could use that technique, but I'm going to show you guys another poem. So I was just talking about the telescopic poetry technique is where you start with one specific topic and then you zoom out, right? And so in that last poem, I talked about memories and how first I was talking about the psychology of how memories work and how neurology, we obtain memories and how the neurons can obtain memories and they're stored in our minds. And then I talked about how that influences my life and my emotions and how impactful it is for me. And then thirdly, I talked about how that can be applied to a whole community or society, right? And so then this next poem, I'm going to talk about language, which is also impactful, right? So I started with very specific details about language and then kind of zoomed in to have to do with more broader and more broad topics. The written language sits in anguish, mangled and damaged, dismantled, banished, vanished without a trace. Now 26 characters and spaces sits in its place, terabytes every day, saved that never get erased. From graffiti on pavements to paper and permanent placements and communication stations, spreading the statements on beats and cadences. Since the 80s, it said that they existed, but really it stayed with the words that played. Don't wait as we vocate and operate. Our importance is stated language, the interconnected oasis. If you find where it's placed, copy and paste it, save it with haste before it's erased. First you listen, then you can taste it and make your own statements, post it and frame it, needing no explanations to be saved in streaming databases to be played and replayed for ages. Language has managed so much. Let's salvage trust as increasingly functional expressions of us. So I'm gonna need you to touch up on those pencils you clutch before you do so much. There's many different styles and outcomes. Where I'm from, I've seen thousands of albums. I've seen DJs outspun. I've seen MCs outtongue. I see music outdone. I see where it came out from. It's played miles from. Recognition of the outcome with internet and outlets. Recall it and browse it. We're always around it. Always the loudest, and then it doesn't make a sound. In nature, it's found as rain hits the ground. Hear it, repeat it, increase it, feed it, keep it, seed it, until they're speechless and seeking for the reasons of the meanings. You think you got it good, but it's all relative. Watch someone rip you out your element and relegate what's prevalent. Now spell it in, but conceal your pen, because if you write it once, you might have to say it again. And if you say it once, people might play it again and might even make you some friends, but don't make it an end. Take a second to break a message, send it to whoever can get it, tell it, sell it, and let it embellish until everyone felt it. If it's something you can send, use it to amend. When you do it, you can choose to enjoy and employ. Now, anytime you can read the world's stored words and reports, and there's more to be read for sure. What's in store is more than what can be heard. Wait for the word, discern what you've learned, and use your turn to express your concerns. Write it down and talk about it. Let's get these thoughts unclouded. We're all astounded at how it sounded. I'm proud as I practiced. Now you can call me by my official status, the bachelor who mastered his language arts classes. You see, language has managed so much. Let's salvage trust as increasingly functional expressions of us. So I'm gonna need you to touch up on those pencils you clutch before you do so much. So you can see I'm still kind of got some edits around here that I might not have fully edited out. But also that one was all about language, of course. And I started zoomed in, right, with specifically how language works, especially in the modern times, and how important it can be from graffiti paper, like that it becomes a permanent part of society, like the Constitution or like laws, right, or like radio stations where we're spreading ideas, and we're vote and we have statements that we can stream. Now we can stream, anyone can post their ideas online. And so then you know and then of course it's got hip hop influence here, so we have different styles, and it's almost competitive in many ways, and it's spread and impacting people all around the world, right? But even in nature, we use it, we speak, and we're spreading our language, right? But it can impact people. What you wrote can impact you later. And some people might like you, or you might meet more people because of your words, of course. And that could be taken literally because you talk to them, or figuratively because you wrote it, and you could all of a sudden spread to thousands of people. But then let's consider what we're doing with our language, right? Are we helping people, right? Are we employing people? um and what language is accessible to us, right? There's the world's stored words and reports, right? And that are accessible for us, that we can read writing from anyone from any point in history, and hopefully we can learn from it and start to write our own. So that's what that poem is about. So hopefully that is inspiring for you guys to write. And so I guess I can just so hopefully you kind of are taking in that telescopic idea of writing. And so I'm just going to go through one last poem that I'm going to cover. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions. Feel free to put it in the comments. So I'll do this last poem just to close out the class. And thank you guys all for joining this workshop and stay tuned and keep following the Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center. We've got plenty of more workshops and activities for you guys to engage in. So this last one is about dreams. Another world I've seen, and then the sunlight peeks between the seams. In our sleep, we experience a change of perception outside the regular spectrum to gain introspection from the subconscious presence, sending subliminal messages through vivid dream sessions. It's our deepest, most creative expression, a chance to reign uncontested and escape from suppression, much like release after being arrested. My mind no longer bound by the head it's been pressed in, no longer focused on water, bread, and investments, so the relative incentive of fretting such lessons. At night, my intentions are to answer life's true questions. The rest is pretentious. Yet often when I sleep, only stress is presented. As I relive these threats and confessions set into presence, it feels so real and it's never pretended. I even fret on the ending. I see familiar faces, their expressions are pending. And then a sudden lucid essence I'm lending. My dreams have now sent me to what I view as the best things, to my goals I am tending, my heroes commending, glorious people I'm befriending, my reputation ascending. I have endless possessings, powers and blessings. I am flying, yet resting. My mind in recess, resetting and protesting this human form I'm transcending into the dream essence of my nightly dream sessions. Upon my wake, I understand instantly this is a metaphysical epiphany that uplifts the peacefulness that exists in me. This happens nightly and consistently. this introspection, this internal perception, this self-reflection, mental redirection, and nocturnal lesson becomes an obsession. It comes from the connection to my subconscious presence, sending subliminal messages, riveting affections for more vivid dream sessions. These lessons I'm fed, now questioned in my head as I'm resting on my bed, remembering everything that's said. These lessons I've been fed, now questioned in my head as I'm resting on my bed, remembering everything that's said. Another world it seems I've seen, and then the sunlight peeks between the seams. So that is going to be the last poem that I share with you guys. Hopefully you guys see how this poem also used the telescopic format, where I started with my own personal experiences with dreams, and then I expanded out to kind of how dreams impact my me more in a long-term way, right? So it could be telescopic, not only affecting me internal, external, then community, and then society, but also through time, right? It could be how dreams are impacting me now, and then how dreams impact me lifelong. And this is also is general, so I'm sure this is kind of applies to everyone, a lot of these statements, right? And I think this is how we are all impacted personally by dreams in the moment and lifelong, by our dreams, which I think are very impactful, and understated how impactful our dreams are. Even if we don't remember them, I think they're impacting us. They say that when you're sleeping, your neurons are kind of categorizing the information that you obtained that day and changing short-term memories into long-term memories. So you have your long-term memory banks, which is everything, right? But you also have a different type of memory, which is stored from that day since you slept. And so just like a computer, there's your hard drive, which is permanently stored, and then there's your RAM, which is like a temporary memory that your computer uses when you're running a program, but when you X out of that program, it deletes it all, right? Because it's just remembering, what's going on the screen currently. But then that's not stored in your actual hard drive. So that's why you might only have like 8 gigs of RAM, maybe 16 gigs of RAM, but you could have a terabyte of a half terabyte of hard drive. And so, but that's kind of how our brain works, right? We have our daily today experiences, which are temporary memories, and they're stored into your long-term memories. And in that process of storing that information permanently, we kind of activate random neurons and we experience that as a dream. At least that's, my understanding from what I've read. So hopefully all this was interesting to you guys and enjoyable and educational. And, I encourage everyone to just start writing. So I put in the comments the original creative writing syllabus, which I posted earlier. So if everyone wants to check that out, hopefully. So someone commented, what if I can't remember my dreams? So like I said a second ago, I think it's still impacting you. I mean, maybe you wake up and you feel courageous, or you wake up and you feel sad or scared, and maybe that's because of your dreams. And so some people believe that's like a signal that you should be scared of something today, if maybe you can't remember the specific dream, but I think it will. My theory is that it could be affecting your mood, even if you don't remember the dreams. And that could be a distraction. Even maybe it's just, like I said, it's just because of what happened yesterday, how you categorized. That doesn't mean that, you're to the next day is going to be the same, or that you're going to feel the same the next day. So I feel like it could just be like kind of like a layover of what happened. If something sad happened the next one day, then you might have a dream about it, and then you might still kind of be feeling it the next day. So, but that doesn't mean the next day is going to be bad as well. Or if you have a good day, just so if you feel unusual when you wake up, it could be because of a dream. But I would say don't let that impact you too much, right? because that's just your brain storing your memories. So it's 1 p.m. So I feel like that will be concluding our class. So I want to thank everyone for having joined us today. So please stay tuned. And you can search. I'm going to put my information here in case anyone wants to follow me. I have this Linktree account, which can take you to my YouTube account. I have a YouTube and a Facebook, Instagram. It's all JON space EYE. If you want to check out more videos or music or artwork that I do, or if you need any help in physics or calculus, I can help you with that as well. So thank you guys so much. Feel free to check me out and search JON space EYE on any social media. So thank you guys, and thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center, for putting all this together.
Thanks so much, John. Thank you again. This was great. And we'll send you out the recording as well, so you'll have it and you can share it out.
Okay, thank you so much.
All righty. Thank you.